Now, this is the Earth. What happens if I put a circumscribed tetrahedron in the planet known as Earth? Well, over here, you will see that it's right in the middle of India. And over here, you see that it marks the Hawaiian volcano at exactly 19.5 north. And the Hawaiian volcano, screen on, is an exemplification of a huge upwelling of material that's coming up from the outer core of the Earth. And that upwelling has been persisting for at least 65 million years, judging by the enormous lava flows and effusive material that wells out in the center of the Pacific. Isn't it ironic that we can trace the history of this structure back 65 million years to a plume of material energy coming up from the center of the Earth, radially out at 19.5 north? Except on these planets, such as Mars, instead of, which is very like the Earth as a solid surface, instead of having a vortex, what you've got is a volcano, because the energy which is in the core comes up as a plume of rising hot lava, erupts on the surface, spreads out, forms a big pile of cold rock after a while. Without plate tectonics on Mars, this lava pile has grown to a height of over 25 kilometers above the mean and is over 300 miles across. A huge, huge shield volcano, the greatest shield volcano in the solar system. Now, this pattern is pretty interesting because the pattern is implying very strongly that we are looking at a physics under the pattern. Incidentally, if you go one tetrahedron vertex over, remember each vertex is 120 degrees of longitude around the planet, you will come to the longitude of Cydonia. You go north 48.87, and there is the face and pyramids of Mars. This is what you see when you look at these two tetrahedra inside each other. What does it all mean? One of our colleagues, a gentleman named Stan Tennant, is the head of a nonprofit research foundation in California called the Meru Foundation. Tennant and his people have, for about 20 years now, been looking at a series of ancient texts, the oldest texts on the planet. Literally, Hebraic documents, Greek documents, Arabic documents, Mayan codices, the Rig Veda, all the literature, the great literature of our combined cultural heritage has been focused under their microscope because of a set of clues that Tennant found over 20 years ago that the letter forms of the Hebrew Bible, the very letter forms of Genesis, are possibly formed by variants of shadow projections of tetrahedral geometry. Now, if this were true, it would have some very major implications. The point of relevance is that in a conversation after we had found this global planetary pattern of inscribed tetrahedral geometry given to us by something as off the wall as a set of artificial structures possibly on Mars, I said to Stan, well, what do you know about tetrahedra? And he said, read such and such by Coxeter and other topologists. For about 100 years, there have been a series of mathematical papers published in the mainstream scientific literature dealing with higher dimensions. We are familiar with length, width, and height, 3 dimensions. 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time. In relativity, it's called space-time as a contraction. However, this rather arcane subculture of scientists, mathematicians, topologists, have been dealing routinely with 4 dimensions spatially, 5, 6, 7, all the way up now to, I believe, 26 individual dimensions. And the mathematics to describe them are literally unreadable, so I'm not even going to begin to try to get into it. The bottom line, however, was that as I read these papers, it became very apparent that in these mathematical treatises there were descriptions of events that would be occurring in 3 dimensions if you were modeling things going on in 4 dimensions or higher and seeing projections, shadows, back into our familiar 3 dimensions. Now, all of these papers dealt with this as theory, as simply, intellectual gamesmanship. mathematical doodling, back of the envelope things. But we're not supposed to really take the idea of other dimensions seriously, right? Well, one of the things that these papers predicted was that if you were to look at the right kind of sphere rotating in the right way in 3 dimensions, what you're really looking at is more of the sphere in higher dimensions projected back into 3 dimensions, and that would produce vorticular roiling motion in the mathematical equation, in the spatial transform, and those roiling vorticular motions would be focused at 19.5 north and south.